Hi everyone, Raphael Harry here, and you're listening to White Label American, a podcast where we hear stories from an immigrant or two, sometimes more. Thank you for listening and enjoy the show. Welcome to another episode of White Label American. Thank you all for joining us. Another episode, and appreciate all our listeners. Well, this episode will go first on our Patreon because it's for our special people. And I would like to say thank you to Elena, to Sarah, Danielle, Mark, and of course our guest, who's also one of our Patreons, Jeff. Thank you to each and every one of you. Please don't forget to subscribe to those who will listen later on. And today's guest, without much further ado, he's someone who I'm proud to call a brother. He's a Navy veteran. He's a dad. He's a super awesome human being. I'll put it that way. And he's going to give us a lot about himself, so I'm not going to go too much into it. But he has a unique background that's a lot different to the background of people who we've had on the show. So we'll just dive into it, and without much further ado, I welcome Jeff Schoonmaker. I like saying it the European style. How you doing, brother?
I'm doing well, man. Like I said, I appreciate you having me on, and you kind of referenced it. I know my story is a little bit different than the majority of the stories that you feature on this show. So I'm excited about being given the opportunity to talk about it and share it. But I'm doing well, man. Things are going pretty good for me. Surviving the pandemic, same as anybody else, I guess, and just trying to get through it. But hey,
that's what we're about. And another thing about this podcast is it's about learning, and it's about sharing stories, and it's about everybody taking something from each person's journey and using it to move forward. So, we're trying not to just stick to only one side of the story and or one side of things. And
sure.
we can learn. We can learn from so many backgrounds, and because we all have a lot in common than we think of. And the main thing about this podcast is about breaking the artificial walls that have been set up around us. So if we don't hear from people who we consider to have a different background to us, how are we going to be able to break those walls? So
Absolutely.
yeah. So without much further ado, let's dive in to our guest. They don't want to hear about me. They don't want to hear about you. So introduce us to your childhood and where you were born, and give us some juice.
Yeah, man. So a little bit different than the majority of your guests. I was actually born here in the United States. I'm from Aurora, Colorado, just outside of Denver. Grew up there, spent my first 16 years or so in Denver, Colorado. Loved it. My junior year of high school, I actually packed up and moved to a small town in rural Southwest Missouri. Saw a different part of the country there. A really interesting place, no doubt. So did a couple of years in Missouri after Colorado, and then found myself in the Navy, like you had, touched on there at the beginning of the show here. I've done a lot of traveled extensively for many years. East Africa, Eastern Europe, the Middle East primarily. Those three regions of the world that I've found to be extremely interesting. I've spent a lot of time in various countries, throughout those regions. I'm a married father of two. I currently live in Delaware, of all places. I've been here for about a year and a half now. I'm in the home building industry. I'm looking to put people in homes at affordable prices, and that's kind of what I do these days, trying to find roofs for people.
So before we come into something that just popped in my head, that you're a man who has a lot of East in your life, because all of a sudden you seem to be finding yourself in a part of the world that is either Eastern Africa or the Middle East or Eastern Europe or Eastern United States,
Yes,
East
sir.
Coast. Yeah, so that just popped in my head. But before we get into that, Where do you consider your favorite childhood memory from?
Yeah. So, this was something that I've thought about a lot recently. What was it about my childhood that was so unique and so special? And it's funny. My favorite childhood memories aren't unique or special at all. And we can talk about this a little bit later on in the show here as we get into some of the traveling that I've done. But my favorite childhood memories it's playing sports out in the front yard with the neighborhood kids. Now
Oh,
for us it was baseball and street hockey, more so than soccer.
yeah,
Uh, and when I say football, I mean American football, but baseball, football, hockey. But it's just being out in the street, roughhousing with the neighborhood kids. I had a great childhood. I really did. I was fortunate to grow up in a place where I had the opportunity to do these things safely with a lot of kids my age. But really, that's what it was, man. It's the love of sport and the love of competition, and getting rough and aggressive and having fun with each other. That's really what I remember from my childhood most. There's not one moment that defined my childhood. It doesn't stick out as being my most favorite memory of all time. It really was just the ability to go out and have fun every day safely,
yeah,
uh, compete and get dirty and sweaty. And while not everybody has the opportunity to do it as safely as I did and as comfortably as I did, I
hmm,
think it is universal that kids
yeah,
just want to go out and play.
yeah. I think it doesn't matter the sports, but it's the ability to interact and get to be with other kids. It builds something in you. Even from the medical side of things, you're building an immunity to germs and all that. But on the social side, you're building a
Yeah,
certain skill set from um, leadership qualities to teamwork to uh, all manner of things that we don't consider now, but just in the aspect of having fun, you don't. It's not a structured setting. It's just kids being kids. Just go out there, play.
yeah,
Yes, there might be a bully. There might be, but even navigating all that, just children being able to navigate that, it starts to build.
absolutely.
And we don't think about it until we start looking back now, like, oh, how did we go about it? And you start, oh, wow, look, I did that and I did this. And then you start seeing how who you are today,
Well, I'll
came
tell
to
you this.
be.
I'll tell you this. I was a very competitive athlete growing up. I did have a lot of structure as well, and those memories are fantastic. Also, today you hear terms like travel ball, and I did that. I played very competitive baseball. I traveled throughout the Western United States playing baseball. Those are great memories too. But in terms of my childhood, quite honestly, some of those competitions I felt like, made me grow up a little bit faster than I wanted to, because you
Hmm.
start worrying about more than just having fun with your friends in
Yeah.
that structured environment. So when I think about, what made my childhood great, it wasn't necessarily the structured competition so much as again, just kind of the roughhousing with the group of guys that lived down the street. And I talk about safety a little bit. I was fortunate in that I was able to do it safely, and I say that now. I wouldn't have said it back then because yeah, we broke our arms and we scraped our knees, same as anybody. But when I
Yeah.
say safe, I've watched little kids playing soccer in Somali villages and pulling out 3 inches worth of acacia thorn from their foot. I didn't deal with acacia thorns when I was playing
It's
football.
different now. It's different now, this generation. I mean,
It's
for
different.
my generation playing in Nigeria, we played outdoors in the rain, in the sun. I mean, we played until nightfall. Then nobody worried until your parents came looking for you, like, well, why are you still outside? You don't know you got to come home, pull you by the ears, kind of thing. And I talk to people from other countries, and they have something like that too. Like, yeah, you kept playing and playing and playing. It didn't matter what if it was sports or you were just playing with kids. You were doing something outdoors, but that falls under the safety because you felt safe around your bodies also.
Correct.
So you
Correct.
didn't consider, even if you were doing something that quote unquote was dangerous, it wasn't considered dangerous among the kids,
It's
but
all relative,
in
right? It's all
yeah, all
relative.
relative. But in today's generation, in today's world, it's going to be like, oh my God, I'm calling Child Protective Services. Like, what else going on?
Exactly right. That's exactly right.
You
You know,
it reminded me of this video I saw on Google Talks of an American lady who moved her family to Germany, and I think it's called Action Baby, I think it's called. And she was talking about the first time she took her kids to the playground, and she ended up realizing that she was like the only person who was like freaking out every time her kids fell or her kids something happened to her kids. And she noticed that like all the German parents who were at the playground were just relaxed. Like, yeah, it's a playground. Kids are supposed to fall.
sure.
They're supposed to get injured. They're supposed to like that kind of thing. But the American reaction seemed to be like, are you okay? Do I need to take you to the hospital or
Right.
something? And
Right.
she was like, it's not, they're not saying they don't care, but they're kids. Let them discover certain things. They have to figure it out on their own. And
That's
then
absolutely
if
right.
it's really bad, it's really bad. And I watched that. That was before I even had Clara, and I was like, oh, okay, wow, that's yeah, yeah, I get it. It's because we
You
grew up
get it.
like that too, to be honest.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. So yeah, that's what I think of when I think back to my childhood more so than anything else. But I was fortunate. I was raised very very well in a very safe part of Metro Denver, and I really have nothing to complain about, man. I lived a childhood whereby I was free to have fun, and that's what I
Mhm.
really appreciate the most.
So with that childhood that you had, um, did that lay the groundwork for you adopting a spirit that can be considered nomadic in a way, or adventurous, where
Sure.
it seemed like you now started being attracted to travel or wanting to go experience other places and
Yeah.
see other parts of the world?
Yeah, so quite honestly, I don't think my upbringing had much to do with that at all. It wasn't something that existed within my parents or my siblings per se. Not even so much my friends. Really, I think it was within me. And as I think about this, I was exposed to a lot of immigrants as a child, a lot.
Mm,
I was very fortunate in that regard. Um, that said, I did grow up in an area that was, very much white, upper middle class.
yep.
So the immigrants that I was exposed to, they did stand out a little bit. You knew who they were. You knew that they weren't necessarily from where we were from. Um, for some people, that created, some animosity. It led them to tease people or pick on people. For me, it was the exact opposite. I was intrigued by it, and I sympathized with these individuals who were um, so unique relative to the rest of us or the majority of us growing up where I grew up, that I became very, very interested in who they were and where they came from and what it was that made them who they were relative to what I had been used to and had been exposed to in the past. So my desire to travel, I think, stemmed from a desire to get to know people better. Because I didn't think I didn't think it was right to see people getting picked on for being from where they were from, or for speaking the way that they spoke,
Mm,
or for eating the food that they ate. That wasn't a problem for me. That was an opportunity for me. Even at a young age, I recognized that. And as I got older and discovered the means to travel, I took full advantage of it. So that's really where I feel like my sense of adventure began,
mm,
more out of empathy
yep.
than anything that I had been exposed to as a child.
So
I hope
was
that
that
makes sense.
why you ended up finding yourself in the Navy?
Yeah, so the Navy was an interesting choice for me. Not many people know this, but prior to signing my contract with the Navy, I'd actually engaged with the Army. For a little while, had intended on joining the Army in kind of a secondary infantry role, kind of a combat role, if you will.
Hmm.
My parents really struggled with that, so I rethought that decision and ultimately settled on the Navy. But the desire to join the military at all wasn't, born of some crazy sense of nationalism. It really wasn't for me. I did have that sense of adventure. I wanted to travel. I wanted to see the world. I felt like the military would afford me that opportunity. But beyond that, I was somebody that I didn't really enjoy school in the later years. I didn't know what I was doing with my life at the time. I just knew I wanted to be productive. I wanted to make some money. I wanted to see the world, and I felt like the military would allow me to do that. I did fall into some uh, nationalistic tendencies to a certain extent. I did buy into that for a couple of months, not for very long, but there was a period of time where I considered myself Joe Navy, a term that you're probably familiar with.
Yeah.
But that faded away very, very quickly, and I got back to doing what I wanted to do, and that was using it as a springboard to see the world and meet interesting people, and that's what I did.
Yeah. As someone who, at one point in time, I also wanted to join the army, but for a different reason, because I thought, as someone who couldn't swim, the army would be easier.
It makes sense. Sure, sure.
Oh man, yeah, the things
How'd you feel when they pushed you off that high dive in boot camp, man?
yeah, but by then I was like, yeah, I'll survive. They
Yeah,
won't let me drown.
just fine.
Hey, yeah, I think I had more confidence when I got to the top of the what's it called, the dashboard. Is it the dashboard or the jumping board?
Yeah, the
And
platform.
yeah, the platform. Yeah, when I got up there, and there was actually a white kid who like froze and then jumped out of the line and was like, I'm not jumping. I'm not. I was like, wow, there's a white kid here who's refusing to jump. He's scared. And
Sure.
I thought it was going to be a black kid who would be doing this. So I'm actually, yeah, you know what? I can do this. That gave me
Absolutely.
confidence to say I'm going to jump, and yeah, I can do this. And I actually jumped and swam, but I started doubting myself. So I got towards the end, and then I don't know why I changed my mind, because I was swimming on my back, and then I was like, okay, let me swim on my front, and flipped over, and I was pretty close to the end, and they cussed me out. They were cussing me out, like, why did you stop? Why did you stop? You almost touched the wall, and then you decided to turn over. And actually, one of the instructors said, you know what, go. I'll let you move to the next round. And the chief said, hell no. He got almost to the end, and then decided to stop. Nah, he should go back and start all over again. And I couldn't do it. So I was like, why did I why did I start?
How many times did they end up pushing you off that platform before they passed you?
Oh, I ended up going to ship 17. Yeah, but I didn't go to what's it called, the last test we were supposed to do. I didn't go in my division. I ended up going with another what it called, with another division for theirs, because ended up going to ship 17 because they thought I wouldn't be able to make it. So when I went to the ship 17 and I saw so many people had been there for months, I was like, how long you been here? They were like, oh, I've been here for 6 months. I've been here for 5 months. I was like, what? No, 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 no. I passed.
Yeah.
I jumped the next day. I passed the street the next day.
You put that behind you guys took it as hard as you could, man. I can
the
appreciate
mental
that.
block was gone.
Man, nobody,
I
I
passed the
couldn't
street.
imagine being there for
I
6
passed
months,
the
man.
float. It was like everything was like bam, 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 bam. It was so fast. I was like, wait, so I could have done all this?
All that headache, man, for nothing.
Oh
And
man,
it
it
could have been
was,
a lot
yeah,
worse. That's for
yeah.
sure. Man, 6
I came
months
back,
is,
and people on the ship, people there were like, wait, we've been here for months. We can't pass. How the hell you do it? I was like, I don't want to be here. I just want to
yeah,
get
right.
out. So I think I got out of my division on a Monday. I passed on a Tuesday and went to the the last test on Wednesday into Thursday. So the Friday morning that my division was graduating, I still graduated with my division. So but I didn't match with them. That was the only difference. So
That worked out
but
well.
He walked out.
Worked out well.
I was there. When my RDC saw me, they were like, "I knew you were gonna make it. I knew you just had that push." I was like, well, yeah, I guess."
Well, I'll tell you this too, man. When I
uh,
went through boot camp and then A school, I actually stayed in Great Lakes for A school. It was still a situation whereby the people who finished tops in their class kind of got to. They didn't necessarily get to choose their duty station, but they definitely got to submit their preferred destinations.
oh yeah.
I finished second in my class. The guy who finished ahead of me was the definition of Joe Navy. I'll never forget.
Oh, it was
Uh,
always like that, man. It was always like that.
and he earned it. He earned it. But he was, a military brat, if you will. He grew up in that environment, which I didn't. And he volunteered himself to be stationed on a ship out of Norfolk, Virginia. Which
Ooh,
at the
wow.
time people were like, why is that what you want to do? Why is that where you want to go? So of course he got assigned to a ship in Norfolk, Virginia. For me, I asked to go to the Middle East. I said, I don't care where you send me, just send me to the Middle East. And they're like, why in the world would you want to go to the Middle East? Well, to me, that's the center of the world.
Hmm.
I want to be involved in what's going on in the world right now. And they're like, you could go to Hawaii, you could go to Key West, you could go, to all these other really nice places. You're saying just send you to the Middle East. And again, that's the mentality that I had. I wanted to be where the action was. I wanted to be, where history was being made, and for me, that was the Middle East at the time, and that's how I ended up where I ended up. But the Middle East was a choice for me, and as you know, I stayed there for several years
Oh yeah.
by
That's what I'll
choice.
meet you. Hmm. Yeah, even for me, I chose because I wasn't top of my class, but I the only options I was given was you could pick East Coast, West Coast, but East Coast you could write overseas. I think you could add Italy. We could write overseas or there was a way they did it back then in our A school. So I put overseas included to my East Coast and West Coast. But it was I made it clear that I wanted overseas because I was like, I don't want to stay in the United States. I want to go overseas too.
Right,
That was
right.
just me. I wanted to go outside and see places, and then they gave me Virginia Beach for my first option. So they were like, "Oh wow, you're lucky." They were like, "You're lucky, like you got short duty." I was like, "What's that?" That's within the United States. I thought I was going overseas. I wanted
Right.
overseas, and then my it was for my sea duty, and I picked Bahrain. I think I picked Japan, then Seattle. I was like, okay, they were like, you have to still pick somewhere within the state. So I picked Seattle, and I got Bahrain. And I was like, oh, okay, yeah, finally I got somewhere
Sure.
overseas. And yeah, I was happy and full like, what? You go. I was like, yeah. And well, my family wasn't that happy that I got Middle East. But to me, I was like, yeah, finally. And if the detailer had not written to my department head that I must pick a ship, I don't know why the detailer did that and said I must pick a ship in Norfolk when I was trying to, because they didn't allow me to renew in Bahrain. Because I said I want to go overseas or stay in Bahrain or even West Coast, but I'll stay overseas. I'd rather stay overseas. But he wrote and they showed me the email that said I must pick somewhere in Norfolk. And I said, all right, I'm out. I'm not staying. That was
Right.
it. That was it. I was like, for you to even specify Norfolk, not even give me any other option. I said, yeah, that's it. I'm out. I don't have to
Well,
stay.
and that was back when we were allowed to contact our detailers directly. And I used to call my detailer pretty regularly, and I would tell him, "Look, man, if you want me to stay, if you guys want me to stay in the Navy, I'll consider it, but you got to keep me overseas. I don't want to go back to the States." And that's not something that they would guarantee. I was fortunate. I never had a stateside assignment, and I fought hard for that. But my time was running out. At some
Hmm.
point they were gonna bring me back to Virginia. They were gonna put me wherever they were gonna put me. But I used to tell my detailer, I'd call him up and I'd say, "You keep me in the Middle East, and I'll stay in. I'll sign for another 2 years." But they're not going to keep you in the Middle East for 20 years anymore. That's
Oh,
not
of course. No,
how
for
it
that
works.
I understood, and I was fine with it. But I've met people who have been overseas 16 years, and
Right,
they just went to different countries, and I was like, wow, if I could get 5 to 10 years overseas, I probably would have done at least 10 years in the Navy.
right.
Yeah, I
That
would
was
have
my
stayed
mentality as well.
longer.
Very similar.
But as soon as they were like, "Oh, we want you back right away," I was like, "Yeah, yeah," because there were ships overseas. I would have done a ship overseas. I would have done a ship in
Sure,
Italy. I would have done a ship in Japan. I would have gone. But
sure.
I told them, I said, I'm willing to go, but you guys don't want to take advantage of that. All right, okay, I'm out. Thank you. My contract is literally over by the time I leave Bahrain. So yeah,
Yep.
it works perfectly for me.
I had the same mindset, man.
Ah.
Same mentality.
So when you left for the Middle East, what was the first culture shock that hit you?
The first culture shock. Look, I had prepared myself mentally for what I was getting myself into as best I possibly could. Um, in terms of the culture shock, look, when you first land in the Middle East, the majority of countries in the Middle East, not all of them, but a lot of them, and you do see, the women in the abaya and
Yeah.
hijab, and that'll hit you a little bit. It's not something that ever
Oh,
bothered me or anything
wait,
like
let
that.
me cut you there a little bit.
Sure,
Sorry about
sure.
that. Did you attend that weird orientation class for people going overseas that had everybody going wherever in the world in the same room, and
No,
it's like
I
the
did not.
guy goes through every single place because
Every country in the world in
oh man,
30 minutes.
the
Yeah,
30
no,
minutes
I
is
did. I
30 minutes is
did.
big
I
enough
did.
because
When I first landed in Manama, I
yeah.
did get to. I got to visit the Grand Mosque.
Oh, okay.
Which
So you attended your first orientation was when you arrived
correct,
in Bahrain. Okay.
correct. So I got to visit the Grand Mosque, and visit a couple of sites throughout the country. Which was neat. It was very superficial.
Mm-hmm.
That's not how you learn about a culture and a
Yeah.
country by a tour guided by the United States military. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So look, getting to Bahrain, it wasn't that shocking to me. It really wasn't. It was a little different, but it wasn't shocking. Bahrain, there's some locations in the world that did culturally shock me. Of course, there were. Bahrain wasn't one of them per se.
Mm-hmm.
And I can definitely speak to a couple of places that were a little bit culturally shocking, if you will. But for me, in the Middle East, I've traveled extensively throughout the Middle East. I lived in Bahrain for 3 years, but traveled throughout the Middle East a fair amount. I felt very comfortable in the Middle East. I always have. It was some of my travels in East Africa that were a little bit culturally shocking. Um, you know, and I can speak to that a little bit if you're interested. But for the
Oh
most
yeah,
part,
I am. But before we get into that, I did the weird because by the time I came to Bahrain, you were already there for a little bit, and I did they had the weird orientation class for those living for everywhere in the world. I didn't know that. I thought it was just going to be for those heading to Bahrain only. And it was in Norfolk because I was in Virginia Beach. So you had to go to Norfolk for this class. And you show up there and it's like, then you discover that everybody in that room is literally going everywhere in the world. And this instructor comes in, he's like the type of guy who couldn't give a damn about, he didn't give a damn about anybody there. It's just like, where you going? Yeah, I'm going to Germany. Where you going? I'm going to Singapore. Where you going? I'm going to Guam. Where you going? I'm going to, all right. I write every country on the board. And it's all right, I spent 15 minutes telling you about each place. Yeah, don't do this. Yeah, you don't do this. That. So it's like, okay, well, how many people going to the Middle East? Everybody just lumps them together. And of course, Sharia law. Don't talk to their women. Cover yourself. And I'm like, shit.
yeah.
Maybe I chose the
I'm
wrong
glad you
place.
brought that up. I'm glad you brought that up because that is one of the expectations when you land in the Middle East is, who can I talk to? Who can I look at?
Yeah,
What
but
can
I
I
was
say?
born in Nigeria, and I grew up around Muslims, but it's a different. I guess I was already becoming Americanized, and then after the orientation, my mindset just changed to like, oh man, I chose the wrong duty station. I wish I could change it now to somewhere else. So that just made me like, oh man, I don't want to come to Bahrain anymore. And then when I arrived in Bahrain, and I was like, I'm only going to stay on base, just hang around base, and then after like 2 weeks, I'm like, man, what the hell? This is the rubbish.
Time to get out and explore. And you talk about that guy speaking to everybody, regardless of where they're going throughout the world. And to me, that's quite honestly, it's incredibly disrespectful. It's very dismissive.
That dude probably never been to any of those countries.
You can't teach anybody anything about an entire country in 10 minutes, man. And
Yeah.
to even act as though you can, I think is wrong and a failure of the United States military, quite honestly, to oversimplify, the lives of billions of people, quite literally. It's just, it's unbelievable. But again, I've traveled throughout the Middle East, and every Middle Eastern country is different, right?
Exactly.
I go to, I've been to Beirut, Lebanon, right? You spend time in Beirut, Lebanon, it's very different than, Muscat, Oman, where I've spent a lot of time as well. You travel from Muscat, right up to Dubai. It's a 30-minute flight, right? Totally different world in the United Arab Emirates. It's a totally different world within the United Arab Emirates. Excuse me. So, again, you do have those fears and those biases and those unknowns as you travel to a new part of the world, especially one that's so heavily stigmatized in the United States. You don't really know what to expect, but guess what? You find very, very quickly that everybody's the exact same. Everybody is entirely different, and everybody is exactly the same, right?
Yep.
And what I mean by that is we're all pursuing the exact same things in life, right? We all want to have fun. We all want to eat good food. We all want to take care of our loved ones and provide, right? The way we go about it, for a number of reasons, what we believe or what we've been taught to believe, our environment, the outside influences that have impacted our environment changes the way we pursue those things and how we go about our day to day, but we're all exactly the same, even though we're all entirely different.
That's right.
So look, have I had conversations with Muslim women in the Middle East? Absolutely. Absolutely.
Yeah.
Have they approached me in conversation? Absolutely. Absolutely. So some of these ideas that exist in the United States, these things that we believe or we think we know, we have no idea. We have no idea. And again, that's part of why I wanted to get out there so badly, because I had seen what these folks had dealt with, in my neck of the woods growing up as a child. And it just didn't feel right. Like that's not the way this is. That's not the way it should be. That's not how we should be interacting with folks who are a little bit different than us. And that's why, again, I felt so compelled to experience the places that I've experienced. One of my first interactions with the Middle East was actually during the first Gulf War. I was a little kid at the time, and I remember being in my 5th grade class, and we had some folks from Kuwait, adults, walk into our class from Kuwait, to speak to us about what was going on in the Persian Gulf at the time. I think if you canvass all of my classmates from back then, I don't know how many of them would remember that. To me, that sticks in my soul. I remember it vividly, and I was intrigued. I was interested to hear their story, which is part of the reason why I enjoy your podcast so much. I enjoy hearing immigrant stories.
Wow, that brings me, because you just mentioned, now that you mentioned Kuwait, it reminds me of an experience that you had with the Kuwaiti embassy while in Bahrain.
Oh my goodness. Oh my goodness. So the story of the Kuwaiti embassy, man, this is a unique one. So in Bahrain, right? On Thursdays and Fridays, you go to the Bahrain city center, right? That's what you
Yeah.
do. The city center is the place to be, right?
Mm-hmm.
You remember on Thursday nights in Bahrain, the country was inundated with Saudis and
Oh yeah.
Kuwaitis and Qataris and Emiratis. So the highways were just jam packed, especially on a Thursday night, right? 9 o'clock at night on Thursday, it was crazy, just madness. At the time, I was driving a 1999 Volkswagen Polo. Right, I bought it for $2,000 off of a local Bahraini. It was just kind of a get around car. It had a tendency to overheat. All right, and it didn't just overheat; it would smoke. All right. So Thursday night, I'm coming home from the city center, bumper to bumper traffic. Saudis and Kuwaitis and Qataris and Emiratis all over the place. Right, and sure enough, my car starts smoking on the highway. All right, to get to the city center from where I lived in Jafar, you had to cross what was known as kind of the diplomatic area, right?
Oh yeah. Oh yeah.
So as my car started to smoke, I just reacted and I pulled off the highway the first place I possibly could to get out of traffic. I definitely didn't want to be the guy holding up traffic with a overheating Volkswagen Polo. So I pulled off the highway and into the first spot that I felt was available for me to pull into. It just so happened to be the entrance to the Kuwaiti embassy. All right, so picture this, if you will. It's pitch black. It's Thursday night, and you're the gate guard at the Kuwaiti embassy. With your MP5, and somebody pulls up to the gate with a smoking car.
Oh
right?
man.
Yeah. So I scared this guy half to death. He definitely turned his MP5 on me and had two other guards come out. So I had three MP5s trained on me as I sit in front of the Kuwaiti embassy with a smoking car. I get out, I'm apologizing profusely, trying to communicate to them that I mean no harm. I just, my car's overheating. Scared the poor guy to death.
The poor guy.
Ultimately, look, man, you can't park here and angrily moved me along, which I understood. I get it. But that was an adventure. That was a night I'll never forget, and it's probably a night he'll never forget. He's probably telling the same story to somebody in Kuwait right now.
All right. So before we jump ahead, let's take a quick break, and we'll be right back shortly. Hi everyone, your host Raphael Harry here. I can't believe we've gone past our 1 year anniversary of doing White Label American. I've had the privilege of speaking with some amazing people sharing their modern day immigrant stories, and you've allowed this Nigerian immigrant to share parts of his immigrant journey through this podcast. Also, one of my goals of this podcast is breaking down artificial walls that keep people from getting to understand each other. Based on your wonderful feedback over the last year, I think we have done a decent job in breaking down some of those walls. We would like to continue and expand on this mission, but we need your help. I've had an amazing time creating and producing episodes for this show largely on my own. We have a lot of ideas for new and exciting content to expand upon the mission, but we need direct support from you, our listeners, which is why we have created White Label American Patreon page, where you can make a one-time donation or become a sustaining contributor, where you can get access to exclusive content, help me interview upcoming guests by submitting questions, and even have the chance to sit down with me for a one-on-one conversation, either virtually or in studio. So if this podcast means something to you, and if you really love this show, think about becoming a sustaining contributor and donating by going to patreon.com/whitelabelamericanpod. Thanks for listening and for the privilege of your company. All righty. So you also spent some time in East Africa, and you visited a country that many Africans are not even aware of that is an African country, the Comoros Islands.
Yes.
What stood out to you about that place?
Wow. Comoros. So I was in on Grand Comore, which is the largest of the three islands in Comoros. And for the folks that don't know, Comoros is a chain of islands. They kind of is situated in the Mozambique Channel, just northwest of Madagascar.
Yep.
So I spent about a month on Grand Comore. It was a fantastic place. It's a volcanic island, very green, overgrown jungles. The electric grid was very, very weak there. Supply shipments came once every 2 weeks, maybe once every 3 weeks. So access to some of the creature comforts that many of us are familiar with, it could be difficult at times.
Mm-hmm.
But man, the Comoros Islands were just fantastic. I've met a gentleman down there who just was so happy to show off his children, and he was so proud of his son. He had a couple of daughters that he loved dearly, but when he spoke about his son, it was just one of the most impressive conversations I think I've had with somebody. Just so proud of his youngest little boy. I remember at 5 o'clock at night, every night, I would go to the roof of the building that I was living in, and I would watch the fruit bats fly.
Wow.
I would swim in the ocean, and the coral was fantastic off of the islands, as you can imagine. But look, there's not much going on Comoros. There's not a whole lot of opportunity to make money. There's not a whole lot of opportunity to provide. That said, what I found in Comoros, like I found, basically everywhere I had gone in East Africa, was what people had, they were willing to share. Because what they really wanted was conversation. They wanted to laugh. They wanted to learn. They wanted to hang out. Provided you were willing to commit your time and engage with them positively, they just wanted to hang out, man. And that's what it was about. So, whereas in most countries throughout East Africa, I found myself playing soccer with the local children. In Comoros, we were actually playing volleyball. It was volleyball on the beach all day, all day long.
Wow.
Which isn't something that I expected necessarily. But yeah, it was an interesting month for me because it really did feel much more primitive than what I was used to. It took days to mow your front lawn because you don't have a lawnmower, right? These guys are out there shearing them with manual blades and working their butts off all day long. But we were there actually. I was there in support of a school building evolution, which was fantastic. Watched the school go up, before my eyes. But yeah, Comoros was a very unique stop, very different than the majority of my stops around the world, just because it is so isolated. I mean, imagine being on such a small island, whereby shipments of food and drink arrive once every 2, maybe 3 weeks, maybe more, if there are issues with the shipment, or if the weather or the tide don't align. To be that reliant on one boat, and to be that reliant on the tides and the Mozambique Channel working to your favor, it's a pretty interesting existence for sure.
Yeah, that's why I was interested to hear about that part of the world, because it's not always, you rarely hear anything about it. You rarely hear anything about it. And I know it's a place that could not cool, but it's a place that most definitely has a lot of tourist opportunities. And if people were aware that, hey, that's a great holiday spot, but
sure,
it's
well,
just it needs proper marketing too.
The Comoros Islands are not the Seychelles.
Yep.
You know, I can promise you that. You know, there is a tourist um, portion of the island. There's no question. But even
Hmm.
as a tourist on Grand Comore, your experience is going to be very different than what you're expecting. You know, again, in an island destination like the Seychelles. Um, and while I was there, look, there was some you know, there was some unrest while I was there. And I had met a lieutenant in the Comorian army who had actually trained in the United States. Great guy. Spent a lot of time with him. Really enjoyed my time with him. I don't remember his name. I really don't. But not long after I had left Comoros, there was an assassination of a Comorian officer.
Oh, oh, wow.
Now, was it him? I don't know. You know, but that really stuck with me. You know, whether it was him or wasn't him, I don't know. I really don't. But to have learned that, you know, the assassination had occurred, you know, days after I'd left, and I'd interacted with these folks so closely for so long, you know,
Hmm.
that it really is a stark reminder of, you know, how quickly things can change and how an idyllic location like the Comorian Islands has an ugly side too. And I think every country has that. But that was a very stark, in your face kind of reminder to me that some of these places are a little bit more challenging than even I realized while I'm there.
Yeah, that's no lie. That's just true. But when I say there's the tourist opportunity, um, it's still something that, because a lot of people tend to look at developing African economies in mineral resources only, and to me, a lot of time people don't believe in conservation and investing in the environment. And in many cases, that's still the best way to go to prevent some of this violence from happening, because it keeps people engaged. It's the best way of keeping people engaged. If you're going to go by the minerals only, how many people are you going to employ? You're not. But if you want to keep people engaged and invested in their communities, it's getting them into conservation, investing in that, and and that's one of the best ways. And climate change is affecting all of them too, and it's affecting their
Yeah,
security. So no matter what,
absolutely.
it's a big threat to every aspect of their economies, which is
I'll,
unfortunate.
I'll tell you a really funny story too that happened in Comoros. So we had a member of our team. He contracted malaria, and we had to medevac him to South Africa for treatment. He you know, his fever went through the roof as it so often happens with malaria.
Yep.
Um, as a result of that, we all had to go get tested for malaria, right? As you can imagine. Um, when we went, there were a few of us, um, and this clinic, it was an outdoor open air clinic. And I'll never forget this. And people don't believe me when I tell them this story, but it is 100% true. When we got there, basically, this was going to be a 3-day situation. We would have to return to this clinic every day for the next 3 days. And what they
Wow.
did is they had opened up a razor blade, not unlike you know, a razor blade that you might use to scrape something off of your windshield, right?
Uh
And
huh.
they sliced our index finger, right? You put
Mm.
a drop of blood on the petri dish, right?
Yep.
The next day, they slice the index finger on the other side and do
Yeah.
the same thing, right?
Mm.
On the third day, they brought us back in again, open air clinic, and as you can imagine, you know, a group of white guys getting tested for malaria in an open air clinic on the Comorian Islands is not something that folks see all the time. So we attracted a bit of an audience. On the third day, um, they have to slice our fingers again, but they will only
Wow.
use one of the two fingers that they've already sliced. So you had to choose, you know, which finger you wanted them to slice open, whether it was your index finger on your left hand or your index finger on your right hand, which had already been sliced open. So you were
Dang.
cut.
Ooh.
And just one of the guys on my team was just deathly afraid of blades and needles, and
Mm-hmm.
uh, he fought it and screamed and just made an absolute, you know, ruckus. And we attracted the largest group of people, and they're just laughing, just you know, getting an absolute kick out of watching uh,
Ah.
these supposedly tough American military guys
Yeah.
crying like little babies because we had to get our fingers sliced open just to make sure none of us had malaria. So that was really interesting.
Uh, if only they had seen us in boot camp when we're taking our shots.
Oh my gosh, what a day that was! Huh? What a day that was.
Oh, oh man. So let's jump away from East Africa because you've been to other parts of the world, and there's still other topics that I would like to cover.
Yeah,
Um,
please.
that's you also jumped into East Europe, and your travels there were not just limited to just an ordinary. It wasn't just an ordinary tourist venture. It was also tied to a sport that we both share a lot in common with.
Sure.
It's a favorite of ours. So, how did that your adventure in East Europe begin? Or what triggered you to go into East Europe?
Yeah. So, I told you I'd grown up with some folks who had immigrated to the United States and had some friends from Eastern Europe. So I'd always been interested in that part of the world as well. Quite honestly, the former Soviet states have always kind of appealed to me. The breakup of Yugoslavia and the countries that were born of that have always appealed to me. But my first foray into Eastern Europe, if I'm not mistaken, was actually Latvia. I went to Riga, Latvia, and while I was in Latvia, I did get my first Champions League experience. So you were talking about soccer. You had mentioned that was something that you and I had kind of bonded over as we established a friendship and a relationship. The first Champions League experience is impressive. When you hear the music over the loudspeaker, that Champions
Yeah.
League anthem, that's powerful, and that's something that'll stick with me as well. But I was actually at a qualifier in Latvia, so it was Skanto Riga and Wisla Krakow. So a Latvian side and a Polish side,
Polish
and
side, yeah.
you know this stadium, it's not a world class stadium. I mean, it's a stadium in Latvia that exists on the outskirts of Riga, and I remember, as I was buying my tickets, I was approached by a bunch of really big, loud, aggressive soccer fans. And I recall them asking me, who are you supporting? Who do you support? Who do you support? And not knowing what to say because I didn't know who they were with per se, because I wasn't really familiar with these clubs. I said, "Look, man, I'm neutral. I'm just an American trying to take in a soccer match, And turns out these guys were fans of Wisla Krakow. And as I learned later on, the history of the Wisla Krakow hooligans is one of extreme violence and aggression. So I laugh about it now, and they were plenty nice to me at that point. Wisla Krakow did end up winning that match, so it all worked out just fine. But when you go to your first European match, it does hit a little bit differently than does, say, an MLS match here in the United States. And beyond Skanto Riga and Wisla Krakow, I did attend a Dynamo Kiev match in Kiev, Ukraine, and that really was felt like, anyway, like true European football. And that was an awesome experience for
Do you
sure.
remember who Kiev was playing for that match?
Dynamo Kiev was playing. It was a league match. They were playing Tavria Simferopol.
Oh wow!
Who I think is actually one of the clubs that folded when the Ukrainian premiership kind of fell apart during the Russian engagement, if you will.
Yeah.
And to be in Ukraine at that time too, in advance of the kind of the Russian advancement, if you will, was interesting. Also, I remember sitting with some folks, and Ukraine is a different animal. It took me a long time to find people that were willing to engage with me in English in Kiev, and it was funny because I knew they could. Um, Kiev was a fantastic place. I love it. It's a beautiful city. And once you get the people to loosen up, they're really wonderful people. It just took me a little while to get them to loosen up.
Yeah.
They asking for directions in Kiev, Ukraine was not the easiest thing that I've ever done in Eastern Europe. But I do remember having conversations about at the time. I believe it was Vitaly Klitschko was
Oh
running
yeah.
for leadership positions in
Oh,
Ukraine.
so that's when he just
Mm,
well, that's when he announced that he was going to run.
exactly,
Oh yeah,
exactly.
that's true. I was in Bahrain then. That's true. Yeah.
Yeah, and there was
You know,
there was
that's true. You invited me for one of your trips, and I thought you were kidding. And I was like, I don't know, Eastern Europe. I didn't take you seriously. Now I'm like, dang it, I should have gone.
I probably said, "Come with me to Serbia or something," and you're like, "I'm not going to Serbia."
I was like, man, this guy, I don't take him seriously, man. I tell you, you're kidding. And then I think you showed me photos, or you started telling me about it after you came back, and I was like, dang, you know what? I should have gone.
Yeah.
Should have
Yeah.
gone.
Eastern Europe is a beautiful part of the world, man. And one of the folks, I had to, I take in as much history as I can while I'm out there. And I've gone to a museum. This was in Latvia as well, called the History of the Occupation of Latvia, or the Museum of the Occupation of Latvia.
Mm,
And I remember distinctly, because Latvia and the Baltic states, Lithuania and Estonia, both countries I've been to as well, and think are fantastic places. They've had a rough go, right?
yep,
World
indeed.
War II was rough for them. While the Nazis claimed those countries, they actually never fell, and they're very proud of that fact. But they were occupied to a certain extent. But as soon as World War II wrapped up, right, who took over? The Soviets.
The Soviets,
Um,
yeah.
so the Baltic states have had a tough go, and an older woman in Latvia had stopped me and said, "Look, they appreciate that I'm there, that I'm traveling, that I'm taking in the history and the culture." But they said, "Look, folks in the Baltic states are happy. We're nice. We're friendly. We're welcoming. We want you here." And the reason being is, for years and years and years, we didn't have the opportunity to, experience entertainment and nightlife and tourists and host guests and have the kind of fun that we're having now. So she said, even though, many of us don't have much, we want to share it with you, and we want to have fun, and we want to be nice. And that's why, you enjoy coming to places like Riga and Tallinn and Vilnius, because we appreciate what we have, because we haven't always had it. And that was always a pretty
Mm.
powerful statement for me as I traveled throughout Eastern Europe. That stuck with me.
See, that sounds a lot similar to you know places you've been to in Africa. People not having much, but always willing to share whatever they have
Always,
with
always.
any guest they meet, even though they know that the guest has more. They don't care. It's like, we're just happy to see you here, and just come share, come, whatever I'm eating, come eat with me. Whatever I'm drinking,
Whether
come
it
drink
was
with me. Like, the hospitality is amazing. How much
amazing.
people even in Bahrain, you experience the same thing too. Once you met people, and they knew you were from outside, and you're willing to engage, they were just open to you. And like, come, that's why I used to go sit down at the taxi stand outside the base. I just
Right.
said hi, assalamu alaikum. As soon as you just said, they're like, oh, come, you want to come sit down, you want to drink tea? I'm like, yeah, I just want to just chat with you guys. And they were just open, and you got information, you got so much gist, gossip, whatever, but it was just cool. And the moment you're just willing to engage and just talk to people, and you're not coming there to show that you're superior, or
That's
you're not coming
exactly
with
it.
that mentality of arrogance, the people just open up to you, and they accept you.
That's exactly it.
And I wish people will understand. But it's funny how the people in Latvia may not be aware that people in Africa share that same mentality, and some people in Africa may not be aware that the people in Latvia and themselves have that same hospitality spirit going on. But
Well, that same
that's
mentality exists in Turkey, and it exists
yeah,
in Lebanon, two of the
it's,
friendliest
it's
places I've ever been. That exists. And, even if, in Ethiopia at times, we were eating Nile carp straight out of the lake, or nothing but boiled potatoes, or a chopped up ear of corn. It didn't matter what it was. That wasn't the point. The point was, it's a shine. It's a sign of good faith.
yeah.
I'm willing to share what I have with you. If you're willing to sit down and engage and share with me what you bring to the table, that's all it is. It's a sign of good faith that we're
Mm.
in this together. We're here to get along and learn from each other and have fun together, and maybe share something special for a few minutes or a few hours. And that's what it is, man.
That's true.
And we've lost that in the United States to a certain extent. You don't see that as often here in the United States. Strangers don't just invite you to sit down and drink coffee. They don't just invite you to share a meal with them. You do get that in other parts of the world, and I think it's a problem here in the United States. We don't recognize each other's humanity to the extent that other cultures do.
Do.
You know,
Uh-huh. Yeah, that was going to be a question that I was going to ask, because I think that's why a lot of veterans, when they return from, when they get out of active duty and they come back home, it's probably another reason why we struggle, especially those of us who've been stationed overseas, who've experienced this kind of life. And I talked to one of my guests who now lives in Germany, and I've seen a few who live in other countries, and it's like, once you've experienced something like this, it's like I don't see how I can come back and stay in America and try to readapt to the American way.
Yeah.
So it's like I just want to go back and end up in that environment and be accepted there, because I'm already accepted over there, and it's easy for them to just continue in that life, so they just return back there. So,
and it's important for me to say this too. Throughout my travels, it's not all been good. It's not all been pleasant and fun.
mm-hmm.
I've experienced some really difficult things as well. So I don't want to make it sound like everything is roses in these countries. As well as anybody, that's not the case. All of these places have their own problems.
Yeah.
In Ethiopia, I remember distinctly, and you know how I feel about Ethiopia. I love Ethiopia. It's one of my favorite places in the world. But I remember visiting an orphanage, and there was a young girl whose face I'll never forget, who was silent the entire time I was there. And I went there multiple times. She never spoke. She never spoke. She never spoke. She never spoke. While the other kids were out playing and laughing and having fun and dancing and singing and eating and doing the things that kids do, this girl didn't do any of those things. She hung by my hip, and I appreciated that about her. When I finally, worked up the courage to speak to the sister who was overseeing the orphanage about this little girl, basically what she had said was, look, this girl has experienced more in her life than anybody should have to experience, both violence and sexually. She was abused for the majority of her young life. And this sister told me she lost the ability to speak. She does not speak anymore. She used to speak, but the violence and the abuse that she had endured, she lost the ability to speak.
The trauma has that effect. Yeah.
And that sticks with me too. So while I recognize the beauty of these places, and I could speak about the beauty of Ethiopia for days and days and days, there are some really, really harsh realities, about these places as well. Again, the same can be said of all of these, the United States and these, Western European countries that we all think so highly of. We've all got our own problems as well. But yeah, I've been taken advantage of. I've been swindled and criminalized, and I've witnessed, the effects of violence and poverty, and I've visited refugee camps. I've seen a Somali refugee camp in Ethiopia. I've seen Palestinian refugee camp in Lebanon. I can appreciate what human suffering looks like as well, and that's a part of this also.
You recognize the humanity, and that's important, because if you do not recognize the humanity, then you just only gloss over you make everything look like a paradise. And I think that's where many people make the mistake, because it doesn't mean because we talk about the beauty, we don't recognize the good, the bad, and the ugly. Like I said with a guest who I recorded with yesterday, a different episode that will be coming out. Well, it will come out before yours. But it's important that you mentioned that too, because life is not just one straight line or a horizontal line, or it's why I tell people that we need to know our history, and our history is not, when I say we need to know our history, it's not just always the colorful thing, or we just sort of identify with one part. We need to identify with everything,
Yeah.
and we use that to build towards a better future. That's the goal. That's why
Peaks and
we
valleys,
shouldn't.
man. Peaks
Yeah,
and valleys. You can get to the next peak if you don't, endure the valley,
exactly. So now that I've mentioned the word history,
Yeah.
now we're gonna dive back a little bit. So you, unlike a lot of people who I know, I'm not generalizing that much, but you took an interest in knowing your history, in trying to figure out where you're from, or your family is from, your heritage, and yeah, you mind sharing with us a little bit about
Yeah.
that? And because I
Yeah.
believe that also plays a part into in why you are extra special.
Yeah, so absolutely, and that's I'm glad that we can talk about this because quite honestly, this is what your show's about, right? This is immigrant stories, right?
Yeah.
Well, my ancestors were immigrants too. My immigrant story is a lot different than the immigrant stories that you're featuring predominantly on your show, but there's still an immigrant story attached to me as well. And it's one that I've been interested in my entire life. I've always wanted to know who I am and where I come from, and the uniqueness of my last name that always catches people off guard. They struggle to say it. They ask where it's from, what it's about. So it's something that I've always pursued, very aggressively in recent years. With the help of my younger brother and my grandmother, we've done a whole heck of a lot of research, and we believe we've finally traced our history to the progenitor. In other words, the first of my family to make his way to the United States. Um, so my immigrant story actually starts back in the 1640s, the 1650s.
Wow.
That's when my family arrived in the United States. So we've been here a while, right? Um, but it's more than just the fact that we got here in the 1650s. It's how and why we got here. We believe the first of our family in the United States was a member of the Dutch West India Company, right?
Mm.
Um, he was hired to come here, or he served in a military capacity, and he was brought to the United States to fight in the Indian Wars,
Yep.
right? To settle parts of New York that were still very much inhabited by the native occupants. He was an Indian fighter, and that's how we got here, and that's how my story started here in this country. So it's fascinating to understand that yes, my family does come from the Netherlands, which is something that I've always known, but couldn't confirm with 100% accuracy. Well, we're there. We're at that. We've achieved that now. Okay.
Mm.
Uh, I know where my family comes from. Middelburg, Zealand, which is an island, a Dutch island, a seafaring island. And again, we arrived here, as members of the Dutch West India Company, an organization that has kind of a difficult past. So with that, there's a lot more to that story, and we have uncovered some things that are not pretty. Right? I'm proud of my history. I'm proud of my family. I'm proud of what we've achieved in this country over the last couple hundred years, certainly. But in doing some research, we've uncovered some things that aren't easy to swallow per se. As you learn who your family is and where they lived, there are ways to learn more about them. And one of the ways that we've found or that we found success doing that is through farm records.
Wow.
There are farm records that are maintained in New York for some of the families that did pretty well for themselves. And within those farm records, you can see who lived on those farms, who occupied those farms, who worked those farms.
Mm.
And one of the things that we've uncovered recently is that there are members of my family who, at one point on their farms, did maintain slaves. Right?
Yeah.
Uh, Not overwhelmingly surprising, not unbelievably shocking, considering again that we came over as members of the Dutch West India Company, and I think we know enough about the slave trade to appreciate how that began and with who that began. But to learn that and to know that that is part of who you are and a part of your story. Again, while I'm not surprised by it, it still hits a little bit differently when you see your name attached to that. You know what I mean?
Yep.
Uh, it's different. So that's some of the stuff that I've uncovered recently. And look, there's a lot of good that's come from my family in the last 250 years in this country, or more. But there's a lot of bad as well, and that's something that I'm just now beginning to wrap my arms around and understand as some of this information comes to light.
But you're not willing to shy away from saying that there's bad that has come along with good. A lot of people will just focus on saying, "Oh, the only good that came," and try to push the bad to the corner and be like, "Yeah, we didn't see it. We don't acknowledge it. So if you don't acknowledge it, it never happened. And if it never happened, then we clean.
No,
That kind of thing." And it's important for moving forward, because how do you not repeat the mistakes of the past if you don't acknowledge that it happened?
right, right.
You know?
So yeah, I mean, look, is slave ownership a difficult thing to wrap my arms around? Of course it is. It's a difficult thing for everybody to wrap their arms around if they give it the attention it deserves, right? There are folks who have descended from slaves, right? It's a difficult concept for them, right? So I'm not seeking sympathy or support or anything like that. I'm just acknowledging that it is a truth that exists, as far as I understand it, in my family. It's a truth that exists as far as I understand it in this country, and it's worth talking about. Uh,
Mm.
but beyond slave ownership, again, we came over as Indian fighters, right? And just to say the term Indian fighter is it's a weird thing to say at this point, right?
Yeah.
Uh, so to have participated in that part of American history as well, it's equally troubling, but it's real. It happened, and that's what I'm coming to terms with. And again, I'm happy to discuss and share with you. But it's part of my immigrant story, right? And that's what this is
Yes.
about. It's about discussing the truths of what it means to come to this country and how it happened, and what that looked like.
Yeah, because not everybody just came on a ship and was like a trader or a farmer, and people came here as soldiers, and fought, and we have to admit it, and and it's the truth, and we can't deny it.
Yeah,
But
yeah,
if they never came, well, we probably wouldn't have some people like you today. So
yeah, yeah.
it started with a bad reason or the wrong reason, but down the line, it turned out to be good, because yeah, I guess you're rectifying the wrong that happened in the past.
I wouldn't say that. I'm just trying to, be a good person every day, and I'm not trying to right any wrongs per se. I'm just trying to, live my life and interact with people in a way that makes their day better and not worse.
Uh, you 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 you're a much better person than you give yourself credit for. I know Jeff a lot. He was a very he's I can vouch for you. Don't worry about that.
I appreciate that. I appreciate
So,
that.
as I begin to wrap up the episode, because you've given me a lot of your time, and I appreciate that. Um, from all your travels, and from interactions, and from what you've learned from your family history, combining all together, um, have you adopted any tradition or culture in your daily practice, or your parenting, or your daily life, or your parenting, or how you live, or how you
Yeah,
go about your business, you know
absolutely. Absolutely. And it's not so much in my personal life, so much as my professional life.
okay.
But it becomes very personal. And I'll share with you what I mean by that. Again, we touched on it a little bit, right? If you want to interact with somebody in good faith in the Middle East, on the Indian subcontinent, in
Yep.
East Africa, right? What do? You break bread together. You share a cup of coffee. You share a cup of tea.
Yes.
And I remember distinctly, throughout my years on that side of the planet, regardless of what we were doing, didn't matter. Uh, at 12 o'clock, you were breaking for coffee or tea, right?
Mm-hmm.
Or you
Yeah.
go into a shop or a souk or a market, and you engage in negotiations with a local vendor, right? What do? Let me get you some tea or coffee and let's talk about this,
That's
right?
true.
And if you
It
refuse,
was never straight to business. It was tea
if you
first.
refuse the tea or the coffee, if you refuse to engage with somebody on a personal level, well, they're not going to be real friendly on a professional level, right?
That's right.
You are not negotiating in good faith if you refuse to indulge me for 10 minutes to discuss who you are, where you come from, what you're about. If you aren't willing to share with me, information about your family structure, your upbringing and where you were born, well, I'm not confident that you're going to negotiate with me in good faith.
Mm.
And that was a true thing in the Middle East and East Africa in particular. We would always break for tea. We would always engage in negotiations over tea or coffee.
Yeah.
And I've brought that with me into what I'm doing now, right? I'm in new construction home sales. I'm no longer on the sales floor. I'm no longer negotiating deals with people face to face as much as I used to. But during my time on the sales floor, I made sure that I had a pot of coffee brewing 100% of the time, 100% of the time. And people who work with me who hear this episode will laugh because this is something that I insist upon at this point. But when you get to the office, you brew a fresh pot of coffee, and everybody that comes through your doors, you offer them a cup of coffee. If they accept, you pour yourself a cup of coffee too, and you sit down and you talk. Before you get down to business, you talk. You ask them about their family. You ask them about where they're from. You ask them about what's going on in their life, and you share with them the same. And that has made me very successful in this industry. It's helped me to build very strong working relationships that were born of a professional transaction, but that exist because we related with each other on a personal level. So if there's one thing that I've brought with me from the other side of the world, it's the importance of accepting a cup of coffee when it's offered and offering a cup of coffee when you engage with somebody new.
Mm. Yeah, it took me a little bit to get into that because I'm not a coffee drinker and I wasn't crazy about drinking hot tea. So, but as the guy who had to go make purchases for the department, for a couple of departments at the command, I quickly adapted to doing that. When I started meeting with vendors, when I realized that I couldn't just because I was like in the American mode of, hey, I'm here for business. I'm here for business. And I'm like, wait, no, this don't work like that. You have to, you have, if you want to humanize the people you're dealing with, then you have to talk to them. They're going to talk to you for like 30 minutes, talk about every other thing, yourself, how's family, how's everything going on. Then you get into business.
Yeah.
And when I started doing that, I was getting great deals. They were giving me discounts, and I knew they were making a profit still. It wasn't like they weren't making, they wouldn't give me those prices if they weren't making a killing. But the negotiations and everything just felt a lot easier. Everything went smoother.
Right.
I was like, wow, you know what? If I'd been doing this right from the beginning, there would be less stress. There would have been less friction involved between both of us. And it just felt smooth afterwards. And, so like even when my relief took over from me, the guy came and I told him, look, man, when you go out, that was like one of the first advice I gave him. Like, when you go out to meet with a vendor, just when they offer you tea, drink tea. Are you a coffee person? Tell them coffee, tea. But like me, they like later on they knew me, so they knew that I preferred juice instead of tea. So they started offering me juice later on. But I was like, yeah, when they get to know you, then they'll offer you whatever it's your favorite. But at first, they don't know you, so but take whatever they offer you. Then you can let them know that, hey, I prefer this. This is what I prefer.
Sure. Sure.
And but he was like, but I just want to buy what I want to buy. I was like, no, man, you got to. This is not your. First of all, this is not your country.
Well, that's the thing.
You got to play by their rules.
If you demonstrate to me that you don't have time for me, then I don't have time for you, and the price is the price.
Exactly.
or you're gonna get what you're gonna get. You
Yeah,
know,
you're gonna get more, much more, and then you're
if,
gonna
if you want to sit down with me and let's get to know each other and help me understand why it's worth my time to help you out and get to know who you on a personal level, I'm going to work with you, man. And that's something that I think is very powerful. Offer the coffee, man. Offer the
yeah.
tea, and then accept the coffee and accept the tea. That's it. It's that simple. Afford people the time, afford people the energy. Listen, talk,
Listen,
share.
yep.
That's it, man.
That listening is the best part of it. It's listening is the best part of it.
Yep.
Um, so well, along with your, with being everywhere and all the interactions also, uh, when it comes to food,
Oh yeah.
what's your favorite?
So I can tell you my favorite, and I can tell you my least favorite, because I know that one very clearly as well. But I've got some good stories as they relate to food, as most people do who travel extensively. I'll tell you my favorite food is Lebanese, all day long, all day long,
Ooh,
all day long.
mm,
Give me some shish taouk, and I'm a happy guy, right? Um, that's as good as it gets. I listened to your last episode with Miss Natalie, and she had mentioned Ethiopian injera.
yep.
Okay, as much as I love Ethiopia, I hate injera. I hate injera. I cannot stand it.
Ah,
There's something about the way it tastes and the way it feels in my mouth. I just couldn't get past it. Um, Lebanese, or I'm sorry, Ethiopian food in general is fine. I don't mind the majority of that which is wrapped in injera and shoved into my
yeah.
mouth by a stranger. But the injera itself, I struggled with. But I will tell you one really funny story that I have as it relates to food was actually in Estonia. So I had booked a hotel in Tallinn, kind of in Tallinn, not necessarily touristy, but not so far off the beaten path that I would struggle. Well, when I got there to check in, they had overbooked. So like, don't worry, we've got a sister hotel out in the country a little bit. Fantastic. So they put me on a bus and they drove me out to this hotel out in the country, just outside of Tallinn, which is awesome. It's a cool experience. Well, I get there, and this hotel was not one that really catered to English speakers. Uh,
Oh, okay.
so I struggled to check in. I struggled to do a couple of things because I don't speak Estonian, and their English wasn't fantastic either. But I made it to my room and checked in and did what I did for the night. When I came down for breakfast the next morning, it was a buffet style breakfast, pretty common in a lot of those hotels. And I was walking through the buffet line, and everything was in Estonian. Everything. There were no English subtitles, if you will. Most stuff you can recognize, right? Fruits and
Yeah.
vegetables, cheeses, and it is what it is. But there was this one substance, I'll never forget it. It was this pink. It looked like yogurt. It was a pink kind of creamy yogurty looking substance, and I figured it was strawberry yogurt, something like that, just a common breakfast dish. So I scooped a whole bunch onto my plate. I go to sit down and I shove a spoonful of it into my mouth, and I am just hit with one of the most unique flavors I think I've ever experienced at 7 a.m. It was herring eggs. It was,
Wow.
yeah, they were herring eggs that had been ground into a paste. So it
Wow.
looked like a pink strawberry yogurt, but no, I had shoved a big old spoonful of fish eggs into my mouth at 7 in the morning, and that was one of those food experiences that I'll never forget. The taste of herring eggs at first thing in the morning as the sun's coming up. That's unique. That's unique.
Oh man. You gotta make that for your kids now.
Yeah, yeah.
You surprise them one day. Like oh, this yogurt. What is this? Like, yeah. Now you know what your dad experienced.
Yeah, exactly.
Welcome to the life.
Gotcha. Gotcha.
It can't just be me alone who experienced this.
Yeah. We all have to experience herring eggs first thing in the morning.
Share my surprise at 7 in the morning.
Yeah, dude, at the end of the day, I don't think there's better food on this planet than that which is made in Lebanon. I'll tell you that.
Yeah. All right. So I'm going to ask. I was going to ask about music. But before music, Your kids are still young. They're pretty young, and our daughters, my daughter and yours, one of yours, are about the same age.
Yeah.
So, uh, well, now with the pandemic, traveling is a little bit tricky. But down the line, do you have any plans to put your daughters on the traveling and get
Yeah.
them to experience a lot
Yeah.
of the
So,
the
we,
experiences that you've had?
we absolutely do. Right now my youngest daughter is 2. So I don't want to necessarily spend the money to send her overseas, before she's old enough to appreciate what she's really getting herself into. But as she
Yeah.
grows up, we definitely intend to travel. I intend to ease my family into traveling a little more than I did with myself. So some trips to Western Europe, the Netherlands, for example. I've been putting that trip off for many many years. That'll be one of my first stops, no question. But ultimately, yes, we will travel. My wife and I have been drawn to West Africa as well. There are a lot of locations in West Africa that we're interested in checking out. I don't know if you would refer to Namibia, for example, as West Africa. I don't know
Well,
if
Namibia is southwest.
more Southwest.
Yeah,
But Namibia has always been on my bucket list. I'd love to get
it
down
is on
there
my list too.
at some time. But yes, at the end of the day, yes, my girls will be exposed to travel at a much younger age than I was. But I'll probably ease them into it a little bit. I'm not going to uh, drop them into Ukraine or
Hey, that's good though. At least you start them young, but not too young.
correct.
That makes sense.
Right. Yeah, their
um,
first stop's not going to be a Somali village, east of the Tana River. I probably won't airdrop them into that situation, but maybe at some point.
all
I'll
right.
tell you, I
So,
got a quick one for you on the Tana River too. You'll appreciate
oh
this
yeah.
one. I spent a lot of time east of the Tana River, and when you get east of the Tana River, it is ethnically Somali.
Hmm.
The borders kind of get a little fuzzy there. The Kenyan government claims that it's part of Kenya, but if you ask the people, they are Somali. And I remember being in one of these Somali villages, and I had been playing soccer with some of the kids, as I so often did, and we were right on the Tana at that point. And I remember one of the Somali mothers, and Somali women are some of the most impressive people on planet Earth. Ask me why, but they are some of the most impressive human beings on this planet. And I remember distinctly this Somali mother had walked up to me, and a couple of little boys had been acting out a little bit, getting a little aggressive, a little excited. And one of these Somali mothers pulled me aside and said, "Look, if the kids start acting up a little bit too much, kick the soccer ball down to the river and make the boys get it." And like, what are you talking about? Well, there are now crocodiles in the Tana River, right? So the thought is these kids were so scared of collecting the ball at the Nile River that if I kicked the ball down there once and told them to go get it, they'd stop acting up because they don't want to
Yeah.
deal with the crocodiles in the river. And that was one of the most A-plus parenting moves I think I've ever heard in my entire life.
Oh man.
I've never used crocodiles to my benefit before, and I'll probably never do it again. But I just thought, what an unbelievable parenting move.
Yep. That's not difficult for me to imagine, but if I'd been there, I still wouldn't have been able to kick the ball into the river. That's
Of
the
course
funny
not.
thing.
Could you imagine kicking the ball
I
down
can
there?
imagine the mom saying it. It's not difficult for me, but for me to kick the ball would have been a problem.
Correct, correct. And
Oh,
to be clear, it's not like there aren't crocodiles in that river. There are absolutely crocodiles in that river.
yeah.
So I thought that was a pretty neat thing for her to say.
Oh man. So with all the places you've been to, and all the interactions, did that affect your taste in music?
It did. It did. And what I mean by that is, um, you know, music will follow you wherever you go on this planet, right?
Yep.
It'll follow you wherever you go. So for me, my taste in music developed because I heard the same things no matter where I went. Now, as I traveled, I tried to indulge in some of the nightlife in the various locations that I went to. So what I heard in Eastern Europe, in the Middle East, in East Africa, and all the clubs, whether I'm in Nairobi or Addis Ababa or Dubai or Istanbul or Bucharest, Romania, wherever I was, Budapest, Hungary. You know who I heard?
Who?
Tiesto. I heard Edward Maya. I heard Sean.
Ah,
I heard
mhm.
Flo Rida. These people are on the airwaves no matter
Yeah.
where you go in the world. If you're
Yeah, Tiesto.
out there having
Now I realize where I knew the name from. Because
and
somebody mentioned
that's
Tiesto on the podcast recently, and I was like, I don't know if I know that name. Yeah, I heard his name while I was in Bahrain.
oh yeah. I mean, to this day, if I'm trying to psych myself up for a night out, Tiesto's going on the playlist because that's what I've experienced throughout my travels.
Yep, yep, yep.
So
But
it's
now I do more of I search for people from those places instead of just the Americans. I try to find local artists now.
Yeah, Tiesto's Dutch.
Yeah, he's
Edward
Dutch.
Maya is Romanian. You know, but again, you throw Sean Paul in there. I can't remember where he's from, but
Jamaica.
Jamaica, right? He's from the Caribbean, and so it is kind of a global flavor, but it truly exists across the globe. So,
oh yeah. So which one is your favorite?
Oh, for me, it's Edward Maya, man. If Edward Maya comes on the airwaves,
Edward Maya. I don't know if I know that. I probably know the song from that artist.
Yeah, you would.
But I got way too many artists now that.
Well, when we get off the call here, just Google "Stereo Love." You'll remember
Stereo
Edward Maya.
Love. Okay.
Yep.
You know the person that still stays with me, the song that was big when I was in Bahrain, Ina. Is it Ina?
Ina.
Yeah, Ina. Yeah. The sun is up. That song that's still the only song. I don't play any other song from her. It's still just that song. That's it.
She's Romanian as well, and but she makes her way throughout the Middle East for her performances. So she's well traveled. Yeah, I'm very familiar with Ina.
She was supposed to come to Bahrain that first time I arrived, and then Arab Spring kicked off, and she couldn't make it. Well, she probably showed up now a couple of times after.
I think the same thing. And the second time I was in Dubai, she was supposed to be there, and I don't think she showed up. But
yeah. Oh man, oh man, this has been fun, man. Man, I can't thank you enough for this. This has been beautiful. We'll definitely have to catch up soon. We haven't seen each other in a while. So final question. What would you like to leave the audience with? Could be a quote from a book, from one of your travels. So just anything you would like to leave the audience with.
Yeah. Man, I wasn't prepared for that one. But look, at the end of the day, man, I would just say this, and I've said it a little bit already today, man. We are all exactly the same, even though every single one of us is completely different, right? We all want the exact same things, but we are influenced by so many things about our upbringing and our environment and where we live that we pursue those things and we approach those things differently. But at the end of the day, you and I are exactly the same, but we are entirely different, right? And that's what I've realized throughout my life and throughout my travels, and that's what I try to impress upon people as I interact with them personally, professionally, randomly on the street. Take care of each other, man. That's all it is.
That's beautiful, and that's the truth. And we got to. If we don't take care of each other, there's no way we can. It's part of seeing the humanity. Once you see the humanity in your fellow human, you'll be there to take care of them.
Yeah,
you just
offer people that cup of coffee, man.
Yeah, that's the step.
Accept it. You can spare 5 minutes to have a conversation with somebody.
Yep, that's a start. That's always a good starting point. Yeah. So would you do you have anything you would like to plug in? Feel free.
No, man, I really don't. I'm grateful for the opportunity to sit down and have a conversation with you and see your face again, man. And I appreciate that you recognizing that, every immigrant story is different. Mine is different than yours, but I still have an immigrant story, and it's just a little bit older than some of the stories featured on this show, which I love. So thank you for letting me talk and reminisce, and I look forward to listening to your next episode and the one after that, man.
Hey, it was my pleasure, man. And yay, thanks for coming on and sharing your story. Not everybody is comfortable to share what they know about their family history and go the route that you've gone. But we need more people to be able to go that route and to be able to take that step. So it's something that I'm honored that you chose my platform to do that. And yeah, we hope to have more people taking that step going forward. And it's about going forward and learning. That's what we're about. So, hey, much love to you, brother. Always good seeing you and hearing from you, and appreciate you always. And to everyone listening, say thank you for joining us. Don't forget to share the love, and keep subscribing, keep joining us. And hey, if you want to join us on Patreon, feel free to do that. We can always use you. All right. Thank you for the privilege of your company. Thanks for listening to White Label American. If you enjoyed the show, we'll appreciate if you rate, review, and subscribe to the podcast wherever you get your podcast from. If you have any questions, comments, or have someone who will be a good guest on the show, or you want to be on the show, send us a message at whitelabelamerican@gmail.com. And make sure to follow us on Facebook and Instagram at White Label American. Thank you for your support.